Often in interior design, we talk about accessibility and AODA standards. Now, this is of course common in our practice. Today, I want to go over universal design and what that is and how you can implement it into your designs. I'm going to share with you how you can differentiate between accessible design and universal design. So what do we mean when we say accessibility, and what do we mean when we say universal design? To put it very simply, accessible design means meeting the bare minimum requirements in your space. Universal design is defined as the design of products and environments to be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible, without the need for adaptation or specialized design. Accessible design often fails to address the real needs of people with disabilities as a whole. It instead focuses on providing basic access to specific locations for individual disabilities. This is why a universal design approach is much more effective, as it considers the needs of all users to the entire facility, rather than just a select few. I think one of the important things that I really want to touch on when it comes to universal design is that when we're thinking about designing a space, we're thinking about accommodating people of all bodies, of all shapes, of all abilities and disabilities. So sometimes we tend to think of things very, linear, or what we've been presented in an accessible design case, but sometimes in a universal design atmosphere, we actually need to think about the human form. So let's say somebody who is shorter is sitting next to somebody who's much taller, so maybe 4 foot, and 7 foot. Those are two very different bodies, and they're going to use something like this desk surface in a very different way. And why that's important is because universal design will really think about that application for people of different, say, sizes, with different abilities and different needs. So how do we accommodate for that? Height adjustable desk is a great option, because that actually will allow for somebody who's shorter or taller, or somebody using an assisted device is able to take that piece of furniture that typically in the past has been fixed and makes it adjustable to whatever comfort level works for them. On top of it, we're still thinking about ergonomics, so you're able to have that flexibility and adjustability for all people. So it's not just the, two ends of the spectrum, or the disability versus non-disability, it's for all comfort levels. That's what makes universal design so great to apply in all of your designs. The goal of universal design is to expand the current design parameters to be inclusive of the broader range of users. The universal design will call for things like wider doors and shorter reach requirements. It really is the goal to make the built environment safer and easier for the broader range of users. It makes it easier to accommodate future assisted devices and technology, a lot easier and less expensive. Simply put, universal design is meant to be for everyone, for all bodies and all types. So we do put a bit of an asterisk on this, because the reality is we can't actually accommodate for every single person and all of their abilities, disabilities, visible and non-visible. However, we do have a goal with universal design to capture as many people and as many different abilities, different ranges, as well as disabilities, visible and non-visible, that we can through the built environment. So why is universal design so important? Universal design is particularly important in the built environment. This includes buildings, public spaces, and transportation systems. In many cases, the built environment presents significant barriers to people with disabilities, or those who face challenges in accessing spaces or using the facilities. Universal design is really in place to try and overcome those barriers by promoting a creation of space that are accessible, safe, and welcoming to everybody. By doing so, it's going to foster a lot of independence and social inclusion, as well as ensuring an equal opportunity for all users. So there are many benefits to universal design in the built environment. Universal design can improve accessibility, the safety and convenience for people of all abilities. It really does make the space more user-friendly and efficient, and it can also reduce the need for expensive retrofits, specialized designs, which can really be costly and time-consuming. So universal design can also have a lot of positive effects on mental health and physical health. It reduces the stress and anxiety, and of course, reduces the risk to injury. So a lot of times when we're talking about universal design and creating these spaces to really accommodate the broader range of users, we don't always consider in the design process how somebody that's coming into the space will feel within the space. We do tend to design from our own personal lens, and it's something that we do have to work on in order to put ourselves in someone else's shoes and empathize what their experience is within the space. And we do recognize that this can be difficult to do, and that's where designing with universal design intent really tries to capture and eliminate some of these thought barriers that we have as interior designers, and it does really give us the tools to try and create spaces that are as accommodating to the most amount of users. One of the other great benefits of universal design is it really can add a lot of value to your space. It can enhance the aesthetic appeal and really does make the space more desirable to not just the users within the space, but also the investors. So overall, universal design is going to promote a more equitable and sustainable society that values diversity, creativity, and innovation. So there are 7 principles to universal design, and I'm going to get into them so that you have a really good knowledge set point for what universal design is and how to have really great conversations around universal design principles. So our 7 principles are equitable use, flexibility in use, simple and intuitive use, perceptible information, tolerance and error, low physical effort, and size and space for approach. So when we're thinking about equitable use, we're going to be designing environments that are accessible to people with diverse abilities. This principle ensures that everyone can use the space in the same way, regardless of their abilities, such as physical, sensory, and cognitive. The design should really eliminate barriers that promote inclusivity. Some examples of how you can incorporate equitable use into your space is thinking about creating paths of travel that eliminate barriers. So thinking about an entrance that has automatic sliding doors, a nice ramp or smooth surface that enters the space, it makes it so that anybody with any ability can access the space easily and efficiently. One of the key elements to think about is that we want to create spaces that provide the same means of access to all users. You know, there's a lot of areas where you might see the front steps to a space and it's steps. So it does have that barrier. And, you know, there has been some situations where accommodations have had to have been made in the side of the building or the rear of the building due to the nature of the building location and just the sidewalk allowance and all that kind of stuff. If possible, we always want to try and have everybody accessing a space, public, private, etc., from the same entrance and all being able to use that at the same time. It's really important to not segregate people with different abilities so that they feel different just accessing a space. And that's why it's really important when we're thinking about design is how all bodies are moving throughout a space and that they're all being able to use it equally, which is equitable use. So flexibility in use allows for a wide range of individual preferences and abilities. This principle recognizes that people have different needs and the design should be able to be adaptable to meet those needs. This includes designing spaces that can be used in multiple ways and provide different levels of support, allowing users to customize their experience. A really great example of this is a moving walkway. So think about going to the airport and you see those flat moving walkways. That's a great example of flexibility in use. Let's say you have a mobility issue and you need to get somewhere, it helps you move there quicker. However, you could be feeling tired or a family with children and you could use that moving walkway to get you there faster. Somebody in a wheelchair can also experience the same benefits from a moving walkway in order to get to their destination faster, taking a break perhaps if they need a rest period. Also, if somebody's just in a rush, they can use that moving walkway to get to their gate to get where they need to go. And that's where it allows for all different types of people to get a benefit from using that movable walkway within a space. So simple and intuitive design advocates the use of design should be easy to understand regardless of the user's experience, knowledge, language skills, or concentration levels. This principle seeks to minimize the need for complex instructions, training, or assistance, and promote self-sufficiency and independence. A great example of this is the fire exiting signs, which have been recently updated. Basically, this is extremely intuitive because it shows a person moving in a direction to exit the building. It's very easy to understand these symbols. There are no words if you are not able to read or you speak a different language. It's also clear and bright and easy to discern from a caption image that this is an exiting path. Now you may be thinking, but what about somebody who can't see? That's why we have incorporated the audio alarms that also go with our fire safety systems. So in the event of emergency, there's other ways to make sure that we're capturing as many people's attention as possible to allow them that we need to proceed to the outside of the building. Perceptible information means that designs should communicate information effectively to users regardless of their sensory abilities. This principle seeks to make designs visible, audible, and understandable by using multiple modes of communication. So think of things like text, images, sounds, and tactile cues. This includes designing spaces that are easy to navigate and locate with clear signage and labeling. Some examples include a clear and well-lit signage to building entrance, using high contrast text and symbols for easy visibility, large, easy-to-read room numbers and floor directories near elevators. And from an audible standpoint, we may want to think about capturing all video displays and monitors in common areas, meeting rooms, and auditoriums. And some of the tactile ways would be through using Braille on the signage of rooms, floor directories, restroom signs, and elevator buttons. Tolerance for error means the design should minimize the risk of accidents, mistakes, or unintended actions, and provide users with a safety net in case of errors. This principle recognizes that people make errors and that design should be forgiving and allow for an easy recovery. This includes designing products and spaces that are safe, stable, and provide feedback about users and their actions. A great example is by bringing in flexible workspace furniture. This is going to allow easy adjustment to meet the needs of individuals with different body types and abilities. Tolerance of error is incorporated by ensuring that adjustments are user-friendly and can be made with minimal effort and without the need for specialized tools. So when you think about a height adjustable desk, it's really user-friendly. It's usually a push button with an up or down arrow. It doesn't require a lot of thought around it. It's pretty hard to mess it up, and it just makes it really easy for any users to operate the equipment. This also allows that adjustability so that it works for all users. So when we're thinking about low physical effort, design should require a minimum physical effort to use and accommodate a wide range of physical abilities. This principle seeks to reduce the strain on the user's body and promote comfort and accessibility. This principle seeks to reduce the strain on the user's body and promote comfort and accessibility. This includes designing products and spaces that are easy to reach, grasp, manipulate, and operate, and require minimal force, dexterity, or mobility. A really great example of this is a levered door handle. This is a requirement in commercial spaces to have a levered door handle. However, it's great to even incorporate this into a residential setting. A lever door handle is great because you don't have to have great hand dexterity to use them, but you can also use your elbows to open the door, which requires minimal effort. Another great example of this is automatic sink and soap dispensers. This does increase the usability for all users by eliminating most of the physical effort, like turning the handles and knobs on and off. Something else that can fall under this is moving away from overhead hutches in your office setups. I have personally been moving to more of a standing tower, which accommodates coat, some shelving, and your box file. I have moved that way because one of the issues with a traditional desk with overhead hutch can be that reach to actually open up the overhead hutch. There's also a bit of a safety concern that if there's something in there that could fall out, there's not necessarily the capability of stopping that if you don't have good hand dexterity or even good motor skills when it comes to doing something quickly. So that is something that I've personally really integrated into all of my office designs. I think it's a great way to move into a more universal workspace. So I generally include an ergonomic chair, a height adjustable desk, and propose a storage tower versus a hutch above the desk. So this is some of those ways where we can look at really changing the way that we think about design to create a more accessible and universal design space. By setting up an office space this way, we've accommodated for the majority of users and allows for a lot of flexibility in how that workstation is used, no matter who is using it. Size and space for approach. So design should provide enough space and room for users to approach and use them regardless of their abilities or assistive devices. This principle seeks to ensure that designs are not restricted or limiting and can be used by people with different mobility or assistive needs. This includes designing spaces that provide ample clearances, maneuvering space, and reach ranges, and can accommodate different postures and positions. A great example, again, I go back to that corporate office space because it's easy to identify, and that is a reception desk. A reception desk that has various heights. So the desk is usable by both people in a seated position or a standing position, as well as somebody who might be shorter or taller. It allows for multiple users the opportunity to access the information free of barriers. So now that we know what universal design is, how do we implement it into your space and your designs? Universal design principles can be applied to various spaces to create environments that are accessible and inclusive for people of most abilities. Here are some examples of how universal design principles can be applied to different types of spaces. So one of the common spaces, of course, is a residential space. So a great way to implement universal design is to include a zero-step entrance into your home. When you're thinking about the threshold to your home, you can create a lot of accessibility through the removal of stairs to the front entrance. So we want to think of a smooth transition from exterior to the interior of the home. Another great way is to offer wide doorways and hallways that are at least 36 inches wide. This is going to allow easy access throughout the space for all users, especially ones who use mobility aids. And it can also make it a lot easier to move furniture and other items around. Something else that's really great in a residential setting is to consider putting in some lever style handles. I did mention before why they're easier to use, and in a commercial setting in Ontario at least, it is a requirement. Another great area to think about with your residential design is to consider your switch heights. So a lot of times we put our switch heights at 48 inches above the finished floor. So you want to think about perhaps moving them down to a height that's a little bit more accessible to someone in a seated or standing position. Another big one is to really think about your flooring choices. It's very common for us to use tile and hardwood throughout our spaces, but we do want to think about slip resistance. Some people that have mobility issues or use different aids while walking really do need to be aware of what the flooring material is to help prevent slips and falls. We also want to think about those transitions and make them as smooth and seamless as possible. So just a note on transitions, it makes me think of an experience that I had when I was in design school of how we could experience the built environment from other people's perspectives. Our teacher assigned us some time with a wheelchair. We had glasses that had Vaseline on them, and then we had these gloves that basically made our hands not really good at, grabbing handles and different things. And then we actually went around the school and all took turns experiencing all of these different challenges in the environment. I will tell you, just trying to get over that small threshold in a wheelchair, it felt like you're trying to go over a boulder. It was actually really, really noticeable, and it gave me a whole new level of appreciation for how difficult it is to navigate the built environment when you're in a seated or a wheelchair position. I also noticed that just the ramp slopes, it's actually kind of scary because if you can't get yourself up and you roll back, it's thinking about what's happening behind you and just that mobility through a space, and then even the doorways, when you add in the elbow movement, it was wild to try and actually navigate through these spaces and not hit things. So that was really interesting. Obviously the visual one, it throws you off. All of your sense of depth is gone because everything was, kind of blurred in your vision. You could still see things, but it just wasn't quite the same. And then of course, experience the grip where opening a door just became super difficult and you had to use other parts of your body to really help assist with getting through a doorway. It was one of those things that if you ever have the opportunity to try and experience the built environment from different perspectives, it will absolutely change your entire way of looking at designing space. So that's just something that we did that I am so grateful that we got to experience. So when we're thinking about commercial spaces such as offices, retail stores, and restaurants, universal design principles can be applied to create environments that are accessible and welcoming for all customers and employees. Some examples of universal design principles that can be applied in commercial spaces include wide aisleways, clear pathways, and easy navigation. So we want easily visible and readable signage and wayfinding systems. We really want to think about comfortable and flexible seating options, accessible restrooms and break rooms, hearing loop systems, and captioning for those with hearing impairment. When we're thinking about a public space, we're thinking about spaces such as parks, museums, and government buildings. These can greatly benefit from universal design principles. Some examples of universal design principles that can be applied to public space include accessible entrances and pathways, clear signage and wayfinding systems, accessible seating and restrooms, tactile maps, and braille signage for those with visual impairments, audio description and captioning for exhibits and presentations, and multi-sensory experiences that will engage all visitors. So although we're interior designers, I did not want to forget about the outdoor space. Universal design principles can also be applied to outdoor spaces to make them more accessible and enjoyable for all people. Some examples of universal design principles that we can apply in your outdoor space include accessible parking spaces and drop-off zones, level or gently sloping pathways and trails, benches and seating areas at regular intervals, accessible washrooms and drinking fountains, shade and sheltered options, wayfinding signage, and of course, audio descriptions. So I want to take a minute here and just ask you guys to share any of your experiences in the built environment where you thought a space could be better designed. Is there some particular space that you've been into that you've just gone, what were they thinking? I have one. There is a restaurant in Waterloo region that has an accessible washroom. Great. We need to have accessible washroom. There's only one problem. You have to walk down the stairs to get to it. I never understood why they thought the need to put in an accessible washroom when it was difficult to actually access. So share any of your experience in a built environment that has made you scratch your head and go, what were they thinking? So let's take a look at universal design in action. We're going to highlight an office space that has really accommodated a lot of these principles that we've talked about. The Wavefront Center for Communication Accessibility in Vancouver sought to create a highly inclusive and accessible environment as they plan to move into a new office space. Despite already being a long-standing provider of services for the deaf and hard of hearing community, they aim to accommodate not only guests with hearing impairments, but also those with limited vision and mobility. To achieve this goal, they engaged with the Rick Hansen Foundation, an accessibility certified professional named Jenny Bloom. Jenny helped them design rooms to be accessible to individuals with physical disabilities, including considerations such as natural light, color, contrast, and acoustic features to reduce sound transfer. For instance, acoustic baffles were installed in the atrium to address the reverberation issues. In office spaces, the layout was adjusted to allow people who are deaf or hard of hearing to see the door when someone enters, all while accommodating the radius of a wheelchair. An important aspect was the elevators. Standard accessibility requirements include voiceover announcements for floors. This can be problematic for individuals with hearing impairments. Therefore, they implemented a ding sound at a general volume and ensured well-lit elevators. They also have a phased approach, and they're going to be planning future upgrades, which includes digital screens. Throughout the project at the Wavefront Center, it prioritized meeting high accessibility standards while also considering the needs of the community they serve. Their commitment to accessibility led them to a great collaboration with Jenny Bloom and the RHFAC program, where both parties would learn from each other. In the end, Wavefront Center achieved an impressive RHFAC Gold rating, scoring 96 out of 100 on the assessment, making it the highest rated site in the program to date. Their dedication to creating an inclusive space demonstrates the positive impacts of universal design principles and their commitments to welcoming people of all abilities to their facilities. So something that I haven't gotten into great detail about is the Rick Hansen Foundation Accessibility Certification Program. This is the program that I took to really gain a lot of knowledge and insight around universal design principles and how to incorporate them into your designs. That rating that was mentioned in that article is actually the system that you learn of how to walk through a space and actually give it different scores and levels of improvement. This is great as a designer because it really does give you the tools and the foundations of how to look and assess a space and to really come up with a great proposal to your client of how to incorporate universal design principles. What I loved about the Rick Hansen Foundation certification program that I took was I really grew my awareness in creating space that wasn't just around accessibility. It was also around the universal design and capturing the maximum number of people who go throughout the space. I really do believe that as designers, it's really important for us to try and talk to our clients about how do we create a built environment for the most amount of their users. These tools that I learned in the Rick Hansen Foundation and that I'm sharing with you today really will help with your awareness around how to design space that's not only accommodating for people with accessibility needs, but accommodating for people with all different types of bodies. I think it's really important as designers to open up the floor for that conversation and to really educate our clients on the value of being able to accommodate the most amount of users in a space. I think the hardest part we have when we're meeting with our clients is actually getting buy-in from our clients into upgrading their space or doing a renovation that does meet the needs of most people, because sometimes there's a lot of pushback for different reasons. And in part 2, we're going to get to how do we mitigate that type of pushback from our clients in order to promote universal design. Thank you for joining me today. I'm super excited to share all of this information with you, and I'm excited for all the great discussions that you have, not only here today, but with your clients going forward.